The cemetery was empty except for her. Maria's worn canvas shoes crunched against the frost-covered path as she made her way to the grave she'd visited every week for the past year. In her weathered hands, she carried a small bundle of wildflowers, nothing fancy, just daisies and babies, breath she'd gathered from the field, behind her apartment. They were the same flowers she used to pick with her daughter, back when laughter still filled their tiny home. She knelt beside the marble headstone, her knees protesting against the cold ground. "Hello, sweet girl," she whispered, arranging the flowers in the metal vase. Her fingers trembled, not just from the December chill, but from the weight of a mother's grief that never truly lifts. Sarah had been only 19 when the accident took her. One moment she was crossing the street after her evening shift at the diner. The next, Maria closed her eyes, pushing away the memories that still stole her breath. As she stood to leave, she noticed something that had become familiar over the months. 3 graves down, another headstone stood adorned with expensive roses, their petals perfect and untouched by the winter air. The flowers were always fresh, replaced weekly by what Maria assumed was a professional service. She'd never seen anyone visit that grave, though the name etched in the stone had become as familiar to her as her own daughter's. Catherine Elizabeth Morrison, beloved wife and mother. Maria paused, studying the roses. They were beautiful, certainly, but they seemed cold somehow, impersonal. On impulse, she reached into her bundle and pulled out 3 daisies. Walking over to Catherine's grave, she placed them gently beside the roses. "Everyone deserves flowers given with love," she murmured. It became her ritual. Every Sunday after visiting Sarah, Maria would leave a few flowers at Catherine's grave. She didn't know why she did it exactly. Perhaps it was the loneliness she sensed in that perfectly maintained plot. Perhaps it reminded her that grief was a universal language, spoken by rich and poor alike. One February morning, as Maria approached with her usual bundle, she found someone standing at Catherine's grave. A man in an expensive charcoal overcoat, his shoulders rigid, stared down at the headstone. His silver hair was impeccably styled, and even from a distance, Maria could see the weight of exhaustion in his posture. She hesitated, not wanting to intrude, but her feet carried her forward to Sarah's grave. As she knelt and began arranging her flowers, she felt the man's gaze on her. "Excuse me." His voice cut through the morning silence, sharp and businesslike. "Have you been leaving flowers at my wife's grave?" Maria's heart hammered. She stood slowly, clutching her bundle. "I'm sorry if I shouldn't have. I didn't mean any disrespect. I just thought, you've been doing it for months." It wasn't a question. He stepped closer, and Maria could now see his face properly. She recognized him immediately. Everyone in the city did. Robert Morrison, CEO of Morrison Industries. A man whose face appeared on billboards and business magazines. A man whose world was so far removed from hers. They might as well have lived on different planets. "I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison, I'll stop. Maria's voice cracked. "I lost my daughter. She's buried right here. And your wife's grave? It always had those beautiful roses, but they seemed so, I don't know. I thought maybe she'd like something picked by hand. Something given because someone cared, not because someone was paid to care." Robert Morrison's expression shifted, the corporate mask cracking. He looked at the daisies resting beside his expensive roses, and his eyes suddenly glistened. "Do you know what today is?" Maria shook her head. "It's Catherine's birthday." She would have been 48. He turned back to the grave. "I've been so busy running the company, managing everything she left behind, that I haven't been here in 3 months. I pay a service to maintain everything, to keep it perfect. Because that's what I do. I pay people to handle things." His voice broke. "But I haven't actually been here. I haven't brought her flowers myself. I haven't sat with her or talked to her or—" He trailed off, his composure completely shattered. This titan of industry, this man who commanded boardrooms and made million-dollar decisions, stood in a cemetery weeping for his wife. Maria's heart ached with recognition. She understood this grief, this guilt, this overwhelming sense of having failed someone you loved. Slowly, she reached out and placed a gentle hand on his arm. "She knows you love her. The heart knows what the calendar can't always accommodate. Does it get easier?" he asked, his voice small. "Does this crushing weight ever lift?" "No," Maria said honestly. "But you learn to carry it differently. You learn to find moments of light in the darkness, and you learn that love doesn't end just because life does. They stood together in silence, two strangers bound by the same thread of loss. Finally, Robert spoke again. "What was your daughter's name?" "Sarah. She was studying to be a nurse. She wanted to help people." Maria smiled through her tears. She had the kindest heart. "Catherine was a teacher before we married. She always said the greatest gift we could give the world was kindness." Robert looked at the daisies again. She would have loved these flowers. She always preferred wildflowers to roses. She'd laugh at me spending money on these elaborate arrangements when she'd rather have picked dandelions from our lawn. Something shifted between them in that moment. A recognition of shared humanity that transcended wealth and status. "Would you—" Robert hesitated. "Would you tell me about Sarah?" Maria did. They sat on the cold bench near the graves, and she told him about her daughter's laugh, her terrible cooking, her habit of singing off-key in the shower. And then Robert told her about Catherine, about her love of terrible puns, her collection of mismatched socks, the way she could make anyone feel valued with just a smile. When Maria finally stood to leave, her knees stiff from the cold, Robert stood with her. "Thank you," he said. "For the flowers, for caring about a stranger, for reminding me what really matters." "We're not strangers anymore," Maria said simply. The following Sunday, Maria arrived at the cemetery to find Robert already there, kneeling at Catherine's grave with his own bundle of wildflowers, daisies, and baby's breath gathered by hand. When he saw Maria, he smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "I thought I'd forgotten how to do this," he said, gesturing to the flowers. "How to do something that matters without delegating it." In the weeks that followed, their Sunday meetings became regular. They'd tend their graves together, share stories, and gradually talk about life beyond loss. Robert learned that Maria cleaned office buildings at night to make ends meet after losing her daytime job. Maria learned that Robert's success had cost him his connection to the simple things that made life meaningful. One March morning, Robert arrived with news. "I'm starting a foundation in Catherine's name for grief support and community services. I'd like you to help run it if you're willing. Not as an employee, as a partner. Someone who understands what it means to lose everything and still find reasons to care about others." Maria stared at him, overwhelmed. "Mr. Morrison—" "Robert, please." "Robert, I clean toilets for a living. I don't have any experience with foundations or—" "You have something more valuable than experience. You have heart. You stopped in the middle of your own grief to care for a stranger's grave. That's the kind of person who should decide how we help others." Tears streamed down Maria's face. For the first time since Sarah's death, she felt something that had been missing: purpose. The foundation flourished, helping hundreds of families navigate grief, providing support for those who'd lost loved ones, creating community spaces where pain could be shared and healing could begin. And every Sunday, without fail, two people from different worlds met at a cemetery to honor the ones they'd lost and celebrate the unexpected gift they'd found in each other. Because sometimes in our darkest moments, when we choose kindness anyway, we plant seeds that bloom into something beautiful, proof that humanity's greatest power lies not in what we achieve, but in how we care for one another when achievement means nothing at all.